Robert Callahan was 67 years old, a retired civil engineer who had spent 38 years building bridges across Tennessee. For almost 4 decades, he understood pressure, balance, and the exact moment a structure could break. He knew how to study cracks before disaster happened, but nothing in his career prepared him for the morning his own son handed him a bill for $167,000 for a wedding he wasn't even invited to attend. The envelope arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. Cream-colored paper, heavy material, expensive printing, the kind of envelope designed to impress people before they even opened it. Robert sat alone at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee when he carefully pulled the papers out. Inside was a perfectly organized invoice. Venue reservation, luxury catering, imported flowers, live orchestra, wedding photographer, videography package, private honeymoon suite in Tuscany. Every single detail carefully listed. At the bottom was a handwritten note from his son Daniel. "Dad, we knew you'd want to contribute in the way that makes the most sense. Thanks for helping us make this special." Robert stared at the note for a long moment. Then he quietly folded the papers, placed them beside his coffee cup, and walked toward the back porch. Outside, Carol's garden was still blooming. His late wife had planted those roses 22 years earlier. Carol always said roses were stubborn. No matter how hard the season became, they kept returning. Robert stood there silently, not angry yet, not even shocked, just hurt in a way he couldn't explain. Because deep down, he suddenly realized something painful. His son no longer saw him as family, only as money. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you've ever seen someone mistake love for financial support, make sure you like and subscribe because this story only gets more unbelievable from here. Carol died 4 years earlier after suffering a stroke. She had been a middle school science teacher for 31 years. Quiet, patient, and stronger than most people understood. After her death, Robert and Daniel became closer for a while. Sunday phone calls became regular. Holiday visits lasted longer. They shared grief together. For about 8 months, Robert truly believed he and his son would stay close forever. Then Daniel met Serena Whitfield, and slowly everything changed. Serena came from old Tennessee money, the kind of wealthy family that never needed to mention their status because everybody already knew it. Her father owned a private equity company. Her mother sat on charity boards and country club committees. Serena herself worked in wealth management, helping wealthy clients stay wealthy. At first, Robert tried very hard to like her. She was intelligent, calm, well-dressed, always polite. But Robert had spent his life studying weak points before collapse happened. And he noticed things. Tiny things most people ignored. The way Serena changed the subject whenever Daniel talked about growing up in East Knoxville. The way she looked at Robert's old workshop full of tools and bridge blueprints like it belonged in a museum. The way she once described Carol's garden as charmingly rustic. The word sounded polite, but it didn't feel polite. It felt insulting. Still, Robert stayed quiet, because fathers learn not to overreact too quickly. The first moment that truly stayed with him happened during Carol's memorial dedication. The local elementary school, where Carol volunteered every summer, installed a small bench in her honor. Simple ceremony. About 30 people attended. Teachers, friends, neighbors. Robert gave a short speech about Carol's belief that education could change any life. While he was speaking, Serena leaned toward Daniel and whispered something in his ear. Daniel smiled awkwardly and stared down at his shoes. Robert noticed immediately. He didn't say anything, but he remembered it. Engineers notice pressure points long before collapse happens. Months later, Daniel called unexpectedly on a Wednesday evening. His voice sounded rehearsed, like somebody had practiced every sentence before dialing the number. "Dad, Serena and I are engaged." Robert congratulated him warmly. He asked when they could all celebrate together. Daniel hesitated. "We're really busy with planning right now, but we'll figure something out." They never figured anything out. Instead, over the next several months, Robert slowly felt himself disappearing from Daniel's life. A dinner invitation canceled twice. Thanksgiving plans suddenly changed because Serena's family had reserved a place in Asheville. A Christmas phone call cut short after only 11 minutes because Serena needed Daniel in another room. Robert was not a demanding father, but he understood patterns, and the pattern becoming clear was impossible to ignore. Someone was slowly pushing him out. Then came the invoice, $167,000, for a wedding he wasn't invited to attend. Robert sat silently at his kitchen table for almost 40 minutes after reading it. Then he made his first call. Not to Daniel, not to family, to his financial advisor, Helen Cho, a calm, intelligent woman who had handled Robert's retirement accounts for 12 years. Helen, Robert said quietly, I need to create a restricted account immediately. What kind of restrictions? No money leaves the account without my written approval for every payment. There was a short silence. What's this regarding? My son's wedding. Another pause. How much money are we talking about? $167,000. Long silence. Then Helen carefully asked, Robert, are you invited to this wedding? No. Helen remained professional, but Robert could hear the shock in her voice. By the end of the day, everything was ready. No vendor would receive payment without Robert personally approving it. Every transaction required his signature. No exceptions. That night, Robert called his oldest friend, Gerald Webb, college roommate, construction contractor, a man who had known Robert almost his entire life. Gerald attended Robert and Carol's wedding decades earlier. He also stood beside Robert at Carol's funeral. If Robert trusted anyone, it was Gerald. I need your help, Robert told him. With what? My son's wedding. Gerald listened carefully. Then Robert quietly added, something doesn't feel right. Gerald agreed to look into things. 2 days later, he called back, and what he revealed made Robert's stomach tighten. This wedding isn't normal, Gerald said carefully. What do you mean? It's not just a ceremony. It's a social event designed for publicity. Robert frowned. Gerald continued. They hired a social strategist. A what? Somebody whose job is controlling public image and media attention. Robert leaned back slowly in his chair. Gerald kept talking. They're trying to get featured in Nashville lifestyle magazines. Serena's family even pushed another booking out of Harrington Hall to secure the venue. Then Gerald mentioned something else. There's already a seating chart. Robert stayed silent. There's a section labeled Legacy Family. And your name is there, but there's a question mark beside it. A question mark. After 37 years of fatherhood, Robert had become optional, conditional, useful financially, but uncertain socially. Something inside him changed at that moment. The next morning, the wedding venue called Robert directly. The coordinator asked him to approve a $42,000 deposit transfer. Robert immediately refused. I never approved any payment. The woman sounded confused. But sir, we were informed you're the primary financial contact. You were informed incorrectly. His voice remained calm. Nothing gets processed in my name without my written signature. 2 hours later, Daniel called, and this time he sounded angry. Dad, why are you making this difficult? I'm not making anything difficult, Robert answered calmly. I simply haven't agreed to finance an event I'm excluded from. Daniel sighed heavily. We're trying to plan a wedding here. And I'm trying to understand why I received a bill instead of an invitation. Silence. Then Daniel finally said it. Serena thinks you've never supported our relationship. Robert stared out toward Carol's roses. Serena has never given me much opportunity to support anything except expenses. Daniel hung up. That evening, Serena arrived at Robert's house personally. Perfect clothes, perfect makeup, perfect posture, and carrying a leather portfolio under her arm. Robert did not invite her inside. They stood on the porch in cold October air. Serena opened the portfolio and showed him glossy photographs of Harrington Hall. Massive chandeliers, marble floors, perfect gardens. This wedding represents Daniel's future, Serena explained smoothly. The people attending could shape his career for years. Robert studied her carefully. And what exactly is this wedding announcing? She blinked. Our success. Our future. And what about Daniel's past? Her expression shifted slightly. This event is focused on the next stage of life. His past includes his mother and father, Robert replied quietly. Serena closed the portfolio. Robert, I came here hoping we could fix this. No, Robert answered calmly. You came here hoping I'd sign checks. Her face immediately became colder. My family can cover the remaining costs if necessary. Then why send me the bill? For the first time, Serena had no immediate answer. Finally, she said quietly, Daniel will remember whether you supported him. Robert looked directly at her. Then he deserves to know I refused to pay for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. Serena left without another word. The sound of her heels hitting the porch steps echoed through the night. The next morning, Gerald called again. And this time, the information was far worse. Robert, the Whitfield family finances may not be what they pretend to be. Robert listened carefully. Gerald explained that Serena's father's investment company had reportedly struggled for nearly 3 years. Rumors of debt, restructuring problems, financial pressure. Suddenly everything started making sense. The wedding wasn't about love. It was about appearance, status, image, and Robert's money was helping maintain that illusion. Then came another discovery. Serena had secretly toured luxury condominiums in Nashville worth between $800,000 and $1.2 million. Multiple visits, multiple financial advisors, and discussions involving a possible co-signer with major assets. Robert understood immediately. This wasn't wedding planning. It was financial positioning. He contacted his attorney immediately. Beverly Marsh. Sharp. Experienced. Impossible to fool. Robert asked her to investigate Serena further. The next morning, Beverly called back. She owns an LLC. What kind? Whitfield Lifestyle Consulting LLC. Filed 8 months ago. Does the business actually operate? No public website. No visible clients. But there's money moving through it. What kind of money? The kind that looks more like financial movement than real business income. Robert felt his stomach tighten. That evening, he drove directly to Daniel's apartment without calling first. Daniel answered the door, looking exhausted. Serena was away attending another charity event. Robert sat at Daniel's kitchen table, the same oak table he and Carol gave him years earlier. Then he showed Daniel everything. The LLC paperwork, the condo information, the financial estimates. Daniel read every page carefully. Slowly, his face changed more with every document. Finally, he whispered, She told me the condo tours were only market research. Robert nodded quietly. Market research for a lifestyle that requires your father's assets. Daniel sat silently for a very long time, then finally asked, What if you're wrong about her? Robert looked carefully at his son. Then she'll stay beside you once the money disappears. The room became completely silent. Heavy silence. The kind that changes lives forever. Several days later, Daniel asked Robert to meet him for lunch. A small diner near his office. Cheap coffee. Simple food. No rich social circles. No pretending. Daniel looked exhausted. We argued last night. He admitted quietly. What happened? She said you were trying to destroy our relationship. Robert stirred his coffee slowly. And what did you say? Daniel stared down at the table. I told her my father doesn't attack people. He studies structures. Robert stayed silent. Then Daniel quietly continued. And if the evidence looked bad, maybe it was because something really was wrong. For the first time in months, Robert felt hope. Not because the wedding might fail, but because his son was finally thinking clearly again. The engagement party still happened without Robert, but according to Gerald, tension filled the room the entire evening. And exactly 11 days later, everything collapsed. On a rainy Wednesday night, Robert's doorbell rang unexpectedly. Daniel stood outside holding a cardboard box. He looked exhausted, broken, older somehow. She ended it, Daniel said quietly. Robert immediately stepped aside and let him inside. Daniel placed the box onto Carol's old coffee table. Inside were books, a jacket, a framed photo of Daniel and Carol together years earlier. And suddenly Robert understood something painful. Daniel hadn't just lost a fiancée. He had nearly lost himself. Daniel sat heavily onto the couch. We argued again about the wedding, he admitted quietly. I told her we needed to scale everything back. I told her I wasn't asking you to pay for something you weren't invited to. Robert listened silently. Then Daniel continued. She told me that if I was choosing my father over her, then maybe I wasn't the partner she thought I was. The room stayed silent for several seconds. Then Robert softly asked, "And what did you say?" Daniel stared at the floor. "I told her maybe I didn't know what kind of partner she wanted anymore either." For the first time in nearly a year, Robert saw something returning to his son's eyes. Clarity. Painful clarity. But real. Daniel slowly looked around the house. Carol's books still sat on the shelves. Family photographs still stood beside the fireplace. Outside, the garden still bloomed. "I almost traded all of this away for appearances," Daniel whispered. Robert sat beside him carefully. "No," he replied softly. "You almost forgot what truly mattered. That's different." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "She made me feel like being ordinary meant failure." Robert shook his head slowly. "Your mother spent 31 years teaching children in public schools. I spent 38 years building bridges people crossed every single day without ever knowing my name. There is nothing shameful about honest work." Daniel finally broke down quietly. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just the silent kind of pain grown men carry when they realize how close they came to destroying the people who truly loved them. Robert placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and for the first time since Carol died, they sat together again as father and son. Not divided by money, not controlled by status, just family. Outside, Carol's roses moved gently in the cold Tennessee wind, still blooming, still surviving, exactly like she always promised they would.